गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉट। गना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। Today we're going to see the nuclear fallout of Pakistan's 27th Amendment. In that, we're going to see Pakistan's existing and new nuclear decision making of critical importance to India at all costs. And to explain all this to us, with me I have Brig Arun Sahgal. Sir, good evening and welcome to Gunner Shot. Long
Thank
time
you,
we're
sir.
talking about a very important subject.
Thank
But
you, sir. Yes.
before we head into the realms of nuclear deterrence and nuclear threats and everything, or nuclear decision making, I'd like to give you I'd like you to give us all your view of this. Whatever has happened, 27th Amendment, is it a soft coup, hard coup, whatever has happened, and what are the implications? And from those implications, we could derive the nuclear angles. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, General Shankar. It's always an honor and a pleasure, and compliments on your achievement of having 10 million followers worldwide. It's not an easy thing to do, and it's all because of your extreme hard work and dedication.
Thank
Full
you, sir.
compliment to you. What I'm going to talk about is something very serious, and something which my perception is we are not paying enough attention to. In Pakistan, there have been major changes, particularly as related to their command and control of the armed forces is concerned. What 27th Amendment has done is that it has created a new command structure within the Pakistani military under the Chief of Defense Force, abrogating the existing Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff. And what is more important is that this Chief of Defense Force will have all the three forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, under his command. And as per the current amendment, the most important thing over there is that the Chief of Defense Force will be concurrent with the Army Chief. So basically, General Asim Munir, as Chief of Defense Force, will also be the Army Chief, and he'll have other two colleagues who are the Air Force Chief and the Naval Chief. In order to ensure that General Munir has his attention on broader political and military issues, two new posts are being created. One post is of the Vice Chief of the Army Staff, oblique or Deputy Chief of the Army Staff. There is slight amount of confusion on this issue, but importantly, both these posts or this next post of Vice Chief of Army Staff will also be a four-star general. So now, what is happening is this: to placate the two services, that is the Navy and the Air Force, their chiefs are also being made as Field Marshal rank, Marshal of the Air Force and Fleet Marshal of the Fleet. So now, this, as if this was not enough, the third element of this whole thing is that what we're going to discuss in more detail is creation of a national strategic command under a military officer from the army nominated or selected by the chief of defense force, and who the prime minister will have no option but to appoint. So what we are now looking at is a command structure. Our conventional force is being commanded by the chief of defense force stroke army chief, and having two more services under him. So there will be an operational chief of defense force with all three services operating under him. And there will be a national strategic command which will also operate under him. So this is what has happened, and this is not a soft coup. This is a major development in our neighborhood. And please understand that this is a nuclear country, nuclear weapon state, and there the entire political establishments have easily abrogated their authority to the one man, that is the Field Marshal Asim Munir, who is functioning under various hats to ensure that the control of the military in all dimensions is with him, not with anybody else, but in him as a person. And more importantly is that his tenure starts today or yesterday when the amendment was finally adopted for next 5 years. So he is going to be there for next 5 years. And the last point in this whole game is that he has given himself an immunity for any future infringements or any past infringements for whom he would be held responsible. So, like Musharraf, who when he retired as the army chief was uh, was facing trial in the court for his past deeds, and he was made an accused. This cannot happen to Asim Munir because he's got a lifetime immunity. So this is the most important development which we need to understand. Having said that, now let me come to the issue of nuclear weapons.
So
So,
before you come to the issue of nuclear weapons,
sure,
I wanted to clarify one thing to everyone who's watching this.
sure,
What you said and amplify it, and we'll have an amplification from you also, and then we'll go ahead.
okay,
You said that the person who's appointed as the commander of the National Strategic Command, right, or the National Strategic Forces, right, he will be selected and recommended by the Chief of Defense Forces, and the government will have no say in saying yes or no to it. It is
yes,
incumbent on the government to appoint
point,
whoever the Chief of Defense Forces recommends to this appointment. Am I right?
absolutely,
Right. Isn't this in a way saying, look, I'm going to control everything, whether it's nuclear, non-nuclear, army, navy, air force, and everything. So it reduces the government to a rubber stamp.
absolutely correct.
So this is for all viewers very important.
See, the
Oh,
national security establishment of Pakistan, just to add on, the
yeah,
national security establishment of the Pakistan has become totally military centric. The political element of that national security element does not exist in the decision making loop. If he wants to consult it, if he wants to bring the prime minister for discussion, etc., or the diplomacy, he will do so on terms that he decides.
right,
So unlike in our country, where there is a thing called the Paul Mill, political level of and military level, where the political level decides the political element or the national security element, and the military executes. Here is now a case where a single man will be doing all that for a nuclear country, a country with nuclear weapons, which is unstable country, which is having a serious internal problems by one man called the Chief of Defense Force.
right. I just thought I'll highlight this. Everyone should understand where we are, where India stands with respect to this. And like what Brig Arun Sahgal has said, this aspect has not been given adequate attention, or it's not been analyzed adequately in our strategic circles. And that is why we decided today that the good brigadier said, look, I want to speak on this. I said, sir, this is absolutely great. And we are speaking on this. So, next, sir, all yours.
Okay, now I want to focus on the most important element of this. See, conventional forces we can deal with. We have the capacity and the capability to deal with. But nuclear weapon and nuclear command and control and strategic stability are a different kettle of fish, and we need to understand that. Can I have the uh, slides, please?
Yeah, sure, sir.
So I have taken the thing to cover this through a small slideshow so that we understand the dynamics, and I don't want to make people make any mistakes or give any wrong perceptions on this. The fun, the bottom line as far as Pakistani nuclear weapons are concerned. Next slide, please, sir. We have to be very clear. The Pakistan strategic forces, his nuclear capability is totally India centric, and it is an intrinsic part of his overall strategic deterrence against India. To maintain this capability and the credibility of his deterrence, he is involved in qualitative and quantitative upgradation of his nuclear arsenal, which includes delivery means, road mobile plus deep silos, and integration of emerging technologies in his nuclear calculus. He looks at nuclear weapons as a part of an overall strategic deterrence to maintain strategic stability in his favor, and it is also seen as an extension of war fighting. Now, this is important to understand that from Indian and perspective, nuclear weapons are political weapons, not to be used, but only for deterrence. But as far as Pakistan is concerned, he has no such qualms. For him, the nuclear weapons are both for deterrence as well as war fighting. So he follows two broad doctrinal precepts to, to achieve his aim. One is he is created a low yield weapons as an extension of his conventional response. He believes that should there be a serious intrusion or existential threat, he would not hesitate to use tactical nuclear weapons as what he believes as a war termination strategy, disregarding the fact of India's no first choose doctrine. I mean, that's his perception. The second thing is he to ensure that he believes that it can escalate. So he has a doctrine of what he calls first followed by second strike. That means he, behind his tactical nuclear capability, he has credible strategic capability in terms of medium range missile systems, which can hit practically most areas of our country. So, towards this, he calls this as a full spectrum deterrence, or some also call it from 0 to 2350. That is 2350 be the range of the his longest weapon system called Shaheen. He is attempting to make his weapon system more survivable and credible through regular technology upgradations. He is presently involved in MERV system development, miniaturization, and moving towards the triad by developing seaborne nuclear capability. Thank you. Next slide, sir.
So before you go to the next one, I want you to clarify two points. In fact, it's one point, but you mentioned it virtually twice. First is the issue of first strike followed by a second strike capability, and the next thing is triad. Both these presuppose that he will have nuclear weapons to retaliate after our second strike, right? And I'd like to also highlight, and your comments also, he's going to get this Hangor class submarines next year. The
Yeah.
first one are going to come, and they are AIP, right? Air independent propulsion.
Yeah.
The moment they are air independent propulsion, they have the capability to stay underwater, and but and would contribute to a second strike capability, and would also contribute heavily towards a triad capability. I'd like your views on this aspect, sir.
Okay. See, uh, the SPD, which is the Pakistani Strategic Plans Division, the guys who are the brains behind their nuclear thinking, are reasonably clever people. They are conscious of the fact is that as per India's NFU doctrine, that should nuclear weapons be used, there is a chances of a massive Indian retaliation. So they are conscious of the fact of when we go down the line, when we see the elements of his nuclear doctrine, he is working on an ability to launch second strike, have enough residual capability to launch the second strike. So that is what is. So that's what when he says first followed by second, that means whatever happens, he must be able to absorb India's retaliatory strike to be able to launch his second strike against India. First being the tactical nuclear strike, and then in retaliation to India's response to the tactical nuclear strike, a second strike. As regards hunger class submarines is concerned, it's a very valid point. What he has done is he is modified the tubes of the Hunger, the torpedo tubes of the Hunger, and is trying to attempting to fix or use these tubes for launching RAD Mark 3 or RAD 3 missiles, which he has developed for airborne systems. But he is trying to modify them to fit into these tubes for firing underwater up to the ranges of 700 to 800 kilometers. Uh, Unlike us, which are looking at a strategic underwater deterrence, he is happy at the moment in his developmental cycle to be able to create a limited underwater capability to respond to targets which are both at sea and at land, particularly given the fact that he can operate from his coastal areas to our India's west coast, where a large number of our important economic and strategic assets are there. So this is what his thinking is.
Thank you, sir.
Can I go to the next slide,
Yeah,
please?
we'll get back to the next slide.
Okay, his strategic concept has got five elements. Just quickly, I'll go through them. He wants to create an effective fighting force, which is with wide-ranging conventional and which can deal with wide-ranging conventional and sub-conventional threats. His credible minimum nuclear deterrence and force postures involves adequate stockpile of nuclear weapons and deliverable systems for an assured second strike. That is what I just now explained. First, followed by second. Survivability of strategic forces withstand sabotage, conventional attacks, and at least initial enemy nuclear strike. At least that's what I'm talking about. Is that it should be able to absorb the first strike, and of course backed up by robust command and control system, which has now been supported to him by operational level availability of Baidu, which is a two-way system, and it has greatly enhanced its ISR capability. Next, please. Uh, his goals and pillars: redress conventional vulnerabilities, standard major priority, manage posture to restore strategic balance with India, deterrent stability through minimum deterrence posture. When he's talking about the minimum deterrence posture vis-a-vis India, as per the discussions and the literature that I have gone through, is he's looking to around 200 odd nuclear weapons as a minimum. But he also simultaneously talks about that I won't want to get into an arms race. The five pillars of his security regime are a robust command and control system. Now, please note these things when I come to the National Nuclear Strategic Command, and you will see how these things are changing. A robust command and control system, multi-layer defense in the entire spectrum of conventional nuclear threat, and which also includes five Ds, which is deter, detect, delay, defend, and destroy. Next, please. Uh, the next is the regulatory systems, comprehensive export control regime. I will not go into that, and international cooperation. These are standard norms of anybody, and so these are important for Pakistan, incidentally, because they want to also project to the West that it is a responsible nuclear player. Next. Okay, so now how does the his strategic decision making as today, before the nuclear strategic command came about, look like? May I have the slide, sir? Now, on top is what is called a National Command Authority, which is chaired by the Prime Minister. It has got two committees. One is the Employment Committee, which is responsible for, we'll go into the details a little later, which is by and large responsible for employing, development, employing nuclear weapons. And the, what is called,
Development
development,
control committees.
sorry, I keep, yeah, Development Control Committee, which is basically to develop new weapon systems, integrate technologies, enhance ranges, look at the kind of warheads they want, all those things. And to do both these tasks, the management structure for these two committees lies in the strategic plans division. Now, this is interesting to note that we do not have this structure. We have what is called Strategic Forces Command, which controls the nuclear weapons in all dimensions. Then we have got an executive committee and a political committee, but we do not have a secretariat, dedicated secretariat of handling our entire nuclear web capability and our nuclear work, if I may put it there, starting from the nature of the weapon system, design, requirement of materials, requirement of warheads, and arms control and other issues. Under the National Command Authorities lies three separate strategic forces commands: one Strategic Forces Command Army, Strategic Forces Command Navy, and the Strategic Forces Command Air. Next slide, please. Now, like I mentioned, is a three-tier structure. An SPD is the second tier, and the three Strategic Forces Command is the at the bottom. Two committees. Integration is through the SPD. SPD is actually the nerve center of the Pakistani Nuclear Command Authority and its nuclear command functioning, and it is responsible for intelligence reconnaissance systems and operate through and every element of the nuclear aspects of Pakistan is done through the SPD. Uh, the important part to understand is the decision to use nuclear weapons is based on consensus within the NCA. The casting vote is of the Prime Minister, but in the absence of consensus, majority vote would also suffice. Now, this is an important issue that we need to understand. The, the launch of a nuclear weapon by Pakistan is authorized by the Prime Minister, who has a casting final vote, but in case there is no consensus, a majority vote would also suffice. So basically, it means was that, I mean, the fact of the matter is that if there is no consensus, the Prime Minister will have a casting final vote. So it basically meant is that the Prime Minister had the authority to launch weapons, nuclear weapons. Why is the political authority necessary for launch of nuclear weapons? But the political authority is necessary is because the impact of the nuclear weapon use is meant on the population of a country. It has leads to a large scale deaths and destruction, and therefore it is the political authority who is selected by the people, responsible to the people, who must take the final call on the use of nuclear weapons. And it is so in every country except one in this world, and that is North Korea. So today, Pakistan basically is moving towards a North Korean type of a nuclear command structure. Can I have the slides, please? Again, sir?
Yeah, 1 minute.
Yeah, no issue. Okay, next slide, please. So I've covered these ECC. I don't want to labor on these anymore. So we go next. Now, what has happened now is that the Constitutional Amendment 27 has created a new command structure. And that new command structure is something which I will now develop on in a little bit of detail. May I have the next slide, sir? Now, the move is now to do away with the National Command Authority and replace it by what is called the National Strategic Command. The main differences in this between the other one are the NCA, as we just discussed, was chaired by the Prime Minister and had both cabinet ministers and senior military officials, and with most important joint oversight and importantly shared decision making to cross the nuclear threshold. So it was not a decision of the military, it was not a decision of the civilian, it was a joint decision. As I said, Prime Minister had the casting vote, and they were responsible for nuclear doctrine, policy, and deployments. But now this has been changed. It will change now to National Strategic Command, led by a commander from the army, appointed by the Prime Minister on the recommendation of the Chief of Defence Staff Forces. And Prime Minister is duty bound to appoint a man selected by the Chief of Defence Force. He has no option in this. And please also note, the Chief of Defence Force is also the Army Chief. So here is one man wearing two hats who now has a man who's commanding the National Strategic Command who controls him. And there is now the most important aspect is that there is now going to be no civilian oversight. And even more importantly, the other two strategic forces command are not going to be integrated in this. This is not very clear. It might just happen that he integrates them, but the fact of the matter is that the command and control and the decision making element of the entire nuclear forces now rests with one man, that is the chief of National Strategic Command, who works under the Chief of Defence Force. So this is what is the change that has happened. So in short, and to clarify, the military today, and not only the military, the army in Pakistan is today firmly in control of the entire nuclear capability of the country and will decide on how to employ it and how not to employ it. It has got some serious implications. We will come back to it. Anything you want to say, sir, at this point in time?
No, no, nothing. Sir, but what you have said, if you could put your slide thing down. So, yeah, thank you. The main issue is what is this thing is it's a single point control, and with the dilution of the civilian control completely. Earlier, it was earlier also. If you saw what the good brigadier had said, the prime minister could cast his final vote, but it was not a veto vote. It was by majority vote that use of nuclear weapons was authorized. But now, even that is gone. See, the whole structure is such that the Chief of Defense Forces will now be the deciding authority to whether to use nuclear weapons or not. Those civilians will be there, but they're pure rubber stamps. Am I correct in my understanding of this, sir?
No, it is not clear under what will be the structure of the National Nuclear Strategic Command. The organizational structure has not come out as yet. But fundamentally speaking, is that the civilians in that command structure would only be in the SPD, which still remains the way it is, and the civilians in the SPD will be there. But bottom line is not that. The bottom line is the duality of control, that is the civil and military control which existed under the NCA, will no longer exist, and the control would be simply will be exercised in any manner that is seen fit by the Chief of Defense Forces. I repeat, the control and the exercising of that control will be done by CDF operating through National Strategic Command. So the civilian oversight, the political oversight is no longer going to be there. And that is a very serious issue, because if we thought in Op Sindoor that there were checks and balances, and if you recollect, there were checks and balances. The the foreign minister was talking one language of reconciliation. There were other languages of restraint. Now that language of restraint is going to be the language which will be decided by the Chief of Defense Force. And when I come to the implications, I will highlight these issues in a little more detail.
Right, sir.
Can I have the
We go
slide,
to
sir?
the next slide, sir.
Yes, thank you. So this is basically I have covered this. So institutional composition we have covered. Next one, sir. Operational control. Now this is something which we were just discussing just now. Under the NCA, the strategic nuclear assets were managed by all three services. They were separately for the Army, Navy, Air Force strategic commands. There was a balanced civilian military mechanism, as I highlighted earlier. But the new model creates a single point military command led by the Army. In matters of nuclear weapons, use, deployment, and control, and this basically means is substantially reducing the checks, balances, agencies, and civilian oversight over these nuclear weapons. So this is an important digression from the existing command and control, and something which we need to be worried about. There is no checks and balances on him. Okay,
Yeah.
next one, please. Next slide, please. So again, I mean, this is belaboring the issue, because when we're talking about the civil military balance, we say there was a constitutional role for the civilian authority. That constitutional role has now been abrogated. That was been removed by Article 27, Amendment 27 to the
27th Amendment.
To the 27th Amendment has removed that control and enhanced military, specifically the Army's primacy. And what is also most important is, and this is something again which is more, granting lifetime protection and authority for key strategic commanders. Now the question again is here. As far as the state of Pakistan is concerned, a decision taken by the National Security Strategic Command or by the CDF or by any of the military commanders, he has a lifetime immunity. So, if he has a lifetime immunity and he is not responsible to the civilian control, what it basically implies is he can act the way he wants to act. Again, I'm repeating this point, the restraint that used to work, the political restraint, and from political restraint for the international diplomatic and international diplomatic pressure on a country like Pakistan, which we saw during Op Sindoor, which precluded them from, let's put it this way, having an NCA meeting also during the Op Sindoor. That is no longer there. There is no NCA meetings. There will only be National Strategic Command, CDF decides, and they say they get into a huddle and they say, it seems we feel that we are facing an existential threat, so I must use nuclear weapons, or I must start doing brinkmanship. The effect of this and what it implies to the other side has to be seen through. India obviously, if India sees this, India will also react, and this will lead to an escalation And this will lead to an unintended escalation, despite the fact that there has been no such reason to escalate. This will be an escalation based on number of factors, which I'll not like to come now. I'll come at the end when I come in the implications. That's a serious issue. The point which is important to note is this: is that it will be the military mind alone, benefit of any other's advice, which will decide how it believes that the conflict or a standoff is working out, and how he believes that he would like to leverage his ultimate nuclear capability, either as a game of brinkmanships, either a game of posturing, either in terms of deployments. How he wants to play that game will be decided by him, and each one of these steps in the nuclear game is escalatory, because it will have a countervailing reaction from the other side. So what is worrisome from Indian perspective is that we may willy-nilly get caught up in a escalation cycle, which is not a conventional cycle, but a nuclear cycle pushing us towards Armageddon. So this is what is the problem aspect of this development. May I have the next slide, please?
Yes, sir.
So, see, now important part is there is no, he'll have a direct command over nuclear assets, we just talked about, and he will be responsible for taking all decisions on nuclear force posting and employment. We just discussed this. He is the controller of the nuclear chain. He will decide what is the level of tactical or strategic response related to the nuclear forces in consultation with CDF. Of course, CDF is the one who will finally decide. SPD has just been reduced to a supporting body. It was always a supporting body, but SPD always, because of its stature, always had a major role to play in terms of managing the nuclear response capabilities of the Pakistanis. Because it was always a senior person. As you know, Mr. Kadwai has been at the helm for last 10, 12 years, and he is a very respected man, and a, a man who I personally believe is a man who will not take decisions in a hurry, and he take measured decisions. He understands the consequences, but we do not know how will the new commander of the National Strategic Command will behave, and how. And the worst thing which the Pakistanis need to understand is that the country might land up in a war scenario or in a nuclear scenario in which they have not bargained for. It is the military, Pakistani military. This is exactly, now want to go back to 1971. What happened? The Pakistani created a scenario in which it started operations in Bangladesh. It started a war with India, and look what happened. So we have to be very clear and conscious of the fact that this is a very serious development. Next plan, please. Okay, this is okay. Next, may I have the next slide, please? Okay, now what are the implications? Now this is something which we need to highlight. The fundamental implication is, with the command and control with the CDF, this the deterrence becomes less institutionalized and can become high stake poker game, like I just talked about. And the Pakistani military, as their want is, and I have always believed that Pakistani military is less strategic, more tactical, driven by the Punjabi mindset, is they will continue to test deterrence and stability on a regular basis without understanding that its implications. In the next standoff or Sandur kind of situation, we can see, and we must be prepared for much larger degree of brinkmanship and posting, and coming much earlier in the conflict, as like other than what we saw in Sindoor 1. So we can see a game of brinkmanship and posturing coming about. The next point is that there are notional thresholds or red lines which the Pakistanis have. There is no clarity in understanding. So the the, the existential threat or the concept of vague notion of national survival may push the military leadership in its attempt to feel macho towards nuclear escalation. Now, this is something which is very, very serious. There are red lines are not defined. Pakistani is could posture early thresholds on vague notions of national survival. That's what I've talked about. And the last point over here is that centralizing nuclear assets under a single commander is inherently risky, particularly driven by faith, pride, and Punjabi militarism converging, making it a toxic mixture. And I'm saying it openly. The faith, the pride, we heard about the faith. We saw prior to Sandur the kind of lectures and what was the statement made by the Field Marshal Munir in the United States. We have seen the pride, the narrative which has been spread, and Punjabi militarism and notion of Punjabi, we are tall, we are tough people, we'll take it on, etc., could make this into a very toxic mixture, particularly when there is no oversight. So, like Ambassador Robert Gates have said, Pakistani nuclear weapons are safe until they aren't. It's as simple as that. And there, and the mistake and the ability and the capability of their nuclear capability, which was much better under the Nuclear Command Authority, will now suffer a great degree of danger. Next one, please. The next issue is again, I don't want to be religious oriented, but there is a factor. There is a religious zeal of Pakistan commander, and this layer adds another dangerous layer of risk. The, their propensity to interpret every adverse situation as existential threat could result in nuclear retaliation, which will be seen by their commanders more as a retribution rather than escalation. The notion of existential threat, adverse situation, being thinking of as an existential threat, and looking at nuclear weapons more in terms of a retribution rather than escalation is a very serious perspective which we need to take cognizance of. So, what is worrisome is further is that the response will be based on the military judgment, and even if I say so, by his own faith and his own standing of one man. What is his military judgment? What is his own faith? And how does it impact his standing? Will be done. We are going to go back to Yahya Khan scenario, which we saw. But this is something which we need to be very, very concerned about. This is a recipe for miscalculation, and this miscalculation can be further exacerbated by faulty intelligence, cyber attacks, disinformation, or simply a panic reaction. Now, even the important here again is panic reaction. Militaries do panic. Command structures do panic. There are misperception. The valuation of threat perceptions are go awry at times. But the solace and the understanding of the political authority of the consequences always acts as a balm. It always acts as a sort of, let's put it this way, prevents the military from taking unnecessary hasty decisions. Now, unfortunately, this is not going to happen. This will be very difficult to maintain, particularly when the person who's taking the decision feels that his own standing or his faith is being affected. So, all in all, my last point is the South Asian landscape has never been more dangerous than it is today. And we are heralding into an era of relationship with Pakistan when the Pakistani military is still smarting from Sandur 1. It is already developing new forces like the rocket forces, etc. Now it has gone in for changes in the nuclear command, which is a highly centralized military and nuclear command, uh, particularly and this is a complete recipe for escalation and a future conflict. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. That was a wonderful presentation. I thought this is gives the whole deal from A to Z about Pakistan's nuclear posturing, which can come henceforth. What is coming out very clear is today, we if there's any operation against Pakistan, it is whether this operation or whether the conflict with Pakistan will go nuclear or not now rests almost solely on one person's whims and fancies as to how he perceives a response. That is this new Field Marshal Munir. That's the first part of the story. The second part of the story which comes out is that given the way things have been structured and the way they are progressing in their nuclear capability, it is very hereafter, even in a Op Sindoor like situation, the nuclear card will come very early into play. I
Yes.
mean, we should have no doubts about it, right? And this is something which everyone has to think of. And if nuclear card comes very early into play, uh, then the margin for or the space for getting into a conventional conflict will reduce. But that's a judgmental thing, we don't know. The third problem I see is this complete control with one person means that he could start nuclear blackmail outright,
Yes.
straight up, without anything. He just says, I'm going to use nuclear unless you agree to me. So it puts us in a very difficult kind of a situation. How do we handle this situation is the question which I have for you.
I'm afraid I have no answers.
Yep.
It,
Okay.
the problem basically is the Pakistanis are doing a nuclear blackmail and he's posturing low thresholds. He's trying to posture. Undertaking deployments. He's playing the game of brinkmanship. Sadly speaking, we'll also have to do the same thing. So now the problem occurs is that we are then moving towards what we call an unintended escalation. Now, somebody will make a mistake. There might be a breakdown in the chain. So, so what we have been trying to do all along is what we have been India's approach has been that we are not in this game of nuclear brinkmanship or nuclear posturing, etc. We are not going to use any weapons first. We will at best look at them as a part of a political deterrence because we want to avoid wars. Basically, see, political deterrence means we want to avoid major wars between each other, and that's the whole bottom line. Now, if that switch is becoming short circuited by Pakistan, then we are entering into a dangerous phase where escalation can take place anytime. Number two, which you very rightly said, with this as a caveat behind him, he can be more emboldened in undertaking subconventional and a conventional conflict against us. And certainly upgrade the subconventional conflict against us. More attacks, infiltration into this thing, and we seeing what happening as part of the Red Fort. Although the government has not so far said who is responsible, but look, the scenario was that the entire country was to be hit, and more religious and important places were to be hit by a bunch of guys who are out to destroy national cohesion. And same thing is going to happen. We are seeing happening. Kashmir can become alive, and based on the premise of the Pakistani current military leadership, who are now control of the entire country, to believe that if you guys go beyond a particular level, we will have no compunctions to use nuclear weapons. So this is a sort of a blackmail kind of a scenario which could come about, which we need to be thinking through, and how do we want to deal with it. And I think more importantly for that, we need to sensitize world, particularly the so-called new partners and of Pakistan, the dangerous path that that country is treading. I have seen no reports, particularly in the Western press, where this development have been criticized or even been questioned. This is the sad part of this whole thing. So where is a carte blanche being given to a man who is become, after completing his tenure, is now starting a new tenure for 5 years, and is in total control of the entire military forces, and through his persona and his standing with the weak political government, he is also in control of the political establishment in Pakistan. We are now looking at a military leadership in Pakistan which is has to be dealt with, and this is something which we need to think through.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely, we are looking at a changed scenario, a changed operational scenario. The thing that we will go in for Op Sindoor 2 and all that is the days of the past. I'll be very honest. I mean, if we do that, be prepared that he will eh, pick up the nuclear ante even before. Op Sindoor, we could get away with it because there was some space between the civilian and the military, and they probably didn't expect what the way we reacted and all that. But today, anything happening, my guess is that with this kind of a convergence of control and concentration of control in one hand under one hat of Chief of Defense Forces and the Chief of Army Staff, right? We should expect the nuclear card to be one of the first cards to be played. That's the way one it comes across, sir. And second, in he will back the subconventional operations
Yeah,
with the nuclear card completely. And we've already seen some of it come up. Because if you go back to his last speech, he said, I will be able to reach everywhere.
yeah,
And to back it up, this Delhi blast come. So, and it comes about in a manner in which you really can't blame him, right? And if you start blaming him, the nuclear card will come out. I mean, he's already given his hand out. So we are looking at a change scenario. And I think, sir, we have to, and it's not only for you, I think for the whole establishment of ours, army and political, to start thinking start gaming this situation through as to how do we respond. And I will put across a few issues. Maybe we could discuss that. I think the first thing we have to do is change our own nuclear doctrine. You need to have a nuclear doctrine which matches his capability or intent. And we should make it explicit to all concerned as to what will be the repercussions of this nuclear dimension in unambiguous terms, because Pakistan and its Chief of Defense Forces and Chief of Army Staff will only understand that language for what it's worth. Right? That's the first part of the story. The second part of the story is if the space for conventional operations have reduced, there's a requirement for us to go more hybrid, for which they won't have an answer. So I think the time has come when we have to think more hybrid, more multi-domain, and not the conventional army, land, and naval domains. I mean, this is what comes out of the whole
Absolutely. I agree with you.
thing. And I think we have to start communicating with the people of Pakistan. The military of Pakistan are communicating to not only the military of India, but to the political system in India and also to the people of India that look, you do anything, I'm going to use my nuclear weapons, and hereafter I've done all this, and this is it. But he is virtually going with the idea that nothing will happen to him.
Hmm.
The cost of anything which is being done by Asim Munir and his cohorts should be known to the people of Pakistan. And that cost should be explicit and unambiguous. So, which gets me to the fourth point that our level of strategic communications has to be on a different level. Altogether, we have to completely change the way we are doing our strategic communication, and we have to think differently. And the whole thing as a whole, I mean, when I say this, I've given 4 points. All these 4 points have to be put across in a political construct because nothing beats politics to keep the Pakistan army out of the equation. And this has been my argument ever since Article 370 was abrogated. When the Article 370 was abrogated, we saw that the Pakistan army could do nothing but stand on the sidelines. And I sincerely feel you have to go back to politics, fundamental politics, to sort out this whole story. Sir, your views on this, and after that, I'll take questions.
No, no, I am totally in agreement with you. We have to be prepared for escalation. We have to prepare for blackmail. We have to improve our strategic communication, and most importantly, we have to tell the people of Pakistan the consequences of the games which their military are playing. The price of that game will be paid by them and not by anybody else. And this is something which is, and I will just add one more point. We also have to start sensitizing the international community of the grave danger that this development is making, particularly in South Asia.
Yeah, thank you, sir. With this, I'll take a few questions.
Sure.
I'd like to thank Karam for becoming a YouTube member. Uh, Thought provocator, his fees until Pak army families enjoying overseas face grave consequences. Pak army won't learn the deterring lesson that their actions won't go unpunished. Your views on this, sir?
I mean, this is okay. Yeah, uh, what we have also been trying to say is that we should be able to take, like you said, hybrid, multi-domain operations. Not so much the families. I will not go to the families, but the question is that India must indicate resolve and new doctrines which we are coming out with, that they hybrid multi-domain doctrines, that they will face serious consequences of their actions, and that India will hit much harder, much stronger, much deeper if they try to do these things. This is something which we need to tell the Pakistani people, and when we address the Pakistani people, is the fact is that your military is pushing the envelope towards grave provocation and grave and possibly towards a nuclear holocaust. And this is something they must tell their own military to stop. I mean, it is something India can do only this much. And we should, like I also said, that we must also address the international community.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I'll just add one thing. Look, the question is genuine about the families and all that. It's an option, part of an hybrid option. How we have to use it, whether you want to use it directly or indirectly through the other countries, is a matter of choice. We'll leave it at that. Uh, right. Uh, okay, sir. There are some rumors that Pakistan does not control its nukes, and their nukes are managed by USA oblique Saudi. So your views on this, and in that case, even if this is true to some extent, how does the whole thing play out with the new nuclear structure of this?
Okay. It's an interesting question. My answer to this is I don't think anybody controls Pakistani nuclear weapons. But the fundamental point is there are two ways of exercising control. They have sensors and other elements. They have got nuclear assessment teams, or used to call them NEST earlier. I'm forgetting what it stands for. The Americans have a fair idea of the capabilities of Pakistan. That the Americans have fair idea of the locations of Pakistani nuclear weapons in full, I doubt it. Uh, the next issue is permissive action links. Those are those links which are there, which have to be activated to fire a nuclear weapon. Uh, I There was this perception in people's mind that those were coming from United States. I'm afraid that's not true. The Pakis have developed their own permissive action links, and they are. I do not think even in the software and the capacity of the Americans to even interfere with them. Even if they have, it'll be a limited capability. So in this game, the issue is not how much degradation you can do to his weapon systems, etc. In this game, is one weapon is more than enough. That is the sad part of this game. Because if you use nuclear weapons, then the genie is out. And my famous quote is, nobody on this earth, including the Americans, including the Russians, including the Chinese, have a iota of an idea what nuclear escalation means. They have no idea. There is no nuclear escalation management control issue because nobody knows. Nobody understands this. And you know things like dead man's hand and things like that. So those kind of systems operate everywhere. So the point which we have to understand is this: is that we cannot go with the belief that some outsiders control Pakistani weapons. Outsiders may have an idea about the weapons. They have a 70% idea of the weapons. Let's give them that much. But the 30% of the nuclear weapons will be outside. So if you're looking at the 200, we're talking about 60 odd nuclear weapons still out of the reach of anybody. So this is the challenge that we have to understand.
Right. Um, yeah. The next question, sir, is we have to stop doing reactive diplomacy. Look at Bangladesh. Every day Yunus remains in power. The anti-India hatred grows. How long are we going to react? Stop reacting. Start acting proactively. Well, before I request Brigadier Sahgal to comment on this is what we have to think of. When you look at hybrid warfare, you'll have to look at strategic communication, you have to look at many other things. You have to be proactive, right? And I think there is merit in what you're saying. Sir, your views on this?
I agree with you. I mean, you have to define new norms, new methodologies of dealing with the scenario in which earlier, you see, the problem is that Pakistan is becoming a proliferator not only in strategic sense but is also becoming a conventional proliferator. It is providing systems, weapon systems, training, etc. to the Bangladeshis. So it is becoming a proliferator even in that sense. So we need to be take a call on the nature of that threat. What kind of hybrid measures that we need to adopt? What kind of multi-domain or various kind of operations that we need to develop? What kind of capabilities we need to have? And what will be the nature of these operations and up to what level of escalation can we go? So three things are the nature of operations, the escalation dynamics, and we also have to stop the this issue of Pakistan becoming a conventional proliferator. We saw an interesting case recently as to how the Turks have stopped the our stalled our Apache helicopters from landing in Turkey and coming to India. So these are the kind. So we have to now. If I got a message the other day from an American professor with whom I have been working a couple of years back. He says there is a green dotted green all along your borders in the east. What are you doing? So we have to. We cannot. We have to define. Sadly speaking, we have multi-dimensional, multi-front threats. We have to deal with China. We now have to start dealing with Bangladesh. Now we have start dealing with Pakistan. Then we have a emerging threat even in the territory. I mean, in the maritime domain. So there needs to be an agility of thought and relooking of our options in a much more dynamic time frame and in conversion with the threat that we believe that we have.
Yeah. Thanks, sir. The next question, Brigadier Arun Sahgal, Strategic Command Navy. This means that Pakistan Navy has nuclear weapons and the ability to deliver them. Is that so, sir?
I would work on the premise that they have it, uh, but I am conscious and I have a reasonably good information that the Hunger class submarines are being the torpedo tubes are being reshaped to be able to launch rad missiles with nuclear warheads up to range of 700 to 800 kilometers. That is something which we need to work on. And there was a paper recently produced by SPD, one person from the SPD, where they did talk about that the focus of the Pakistani SPD is going to be on developing a credible maritime nuclear capability to deal with India's strategic systems at sea. In India's triad, basically, are SLBMs, which will be on patrol. So basically, we have to work on the premise that if not today, maybe in another 2 or 3 years, Pakistan will have nuclear weapons at sea.
Right. So, a bit of wargaming. Let's say Pakistan, obviously supported by USA and Saudi Arabia, launches a nuclear attack. Large parts of Bharat are radioactive. Path doesn't exist. Where is the end game? Armageddon. You're looking at the Armageddon scenario.
It's got the mutual assured destruction, sir. But the
But
you know, add to this whole your question the direction of the winds. That's a very interesting issue. Now I'll give you a small example. I was in Chandigarh recently, and the AQI in Chandigarh is 82, or let's put it this, around 100. AQI in Ambala is close to about 250, and AQI in Delhi is 400. Now now this AQI, the fires burning over there, are moving towards Delhi. Now, this is the wind direction at this time of the year. So we have to, when we are looking at nuclear calculations, etc., the wind directions are very important. And from us, from our perspective, the way our AQI is rising, particularly in the west, in the east, will give us an idea as to how the nuclear radiation, nuclear fallout will also take place. So I go back to the original point. If there is a political authority, he will think through these things 20 times. In case of a military command, not that the military commanders are stupid, that they will not think through things. They will think through things. But like I said, Punjabi oomph factor, my मुझ का सवाल जिसको कहते हैं कि I am not going to allow this India to get better of me, that may force, or because of looseness of command and control, a rogue commander may do it. And I did not talk about positive and negative control, But in this game, there is also issue called positive and negative control. And negative control basically means is that it is delegated to commanders, and particularly when you're looking at tactical nuclear weapons, you're also looking at negative control at that level. So if some idiot fires a salvo of 3 or 4 nasers, the game is over. So it's nothing to worry about, nothing to get concerned about. But important thing is we have to think through various scenarios, like we said, you war game these scenarios, and define optimum options, and also define at what stage, what status state stand you will take, and you will tell the other side that look, I any move beyond this level will ask will result in a serious retribution. He has also got 380 million people. If you got 1.4, he got 380 million people on much congested space.
Yeah.
You don't So this is a difficult game, sir. It's not a easy game. So that's why I requested the general that we must get aware of these things. And what has happened is such a seismic change in the military command structure, seismic change in the military command structure, that we need to look at it from all angles and all aspects, and draw our own conclusions and draw our own responses.
Yeah, it's a big change, and that is why I am coming back to Pakistan these days. The change which has happened in Pakistan is something which we need to observe. We can't deal with Pakistan with the same old matrix. The matrix has changed, right? And hence, you're looking at a character who's very scheming, who's very stable, at least from his own perspective, and who is very unpredictable in the way he behaves. And he's a deceiver. Remember, his name is a deceiver. So that's how it is. Okay. And Ashish says, while in Tampa after lunch with President Trump, Munir told American Pakistanis, we've got the bomb. If we go down, we'll take the world or the region down with us. Yeah, that gives his intent out very clearly. And they know this thing. Uh, okay. Okay, this is let's see this. How can India lead in stitching together concerned parties, Israel, Middle East, Korea, Russia, bias of West media, and all that, and internal factions to build a united global front against nuclear proliferation? Well, this is, uh, I think, good imagination and probably based on high ideals, but I don't know whether this is feasible. So, anyway, your views on this?
Yeah, uh, I mean, this is absolutely required. First fundamental thing with the world has to understand is that give up this farce of the NPT states and the non-NPT states. We have to bring all the 8 acknowledged nuclear powers in the same arms control matrix. Once these all states are in the arms control matrix, then you can have a concerted discussions and look at how to bring uh, uh, control this spread of nuclear weapons, and what new arrangements, particularly the START is dead, INF is dead, and now the materials treaty is also dead. So basically, the world is benefit of any serious arms control regime, and with proposal of nuclear testing, the CDPT will also die. So the question basically is that the world has to now, the 5 big powers, the so-called five NPT states, have to get off their high horse and look at de novo this whole issue of arms control and devise measures as to what they must do. And those measures should, I agree with you, will also increase how do we contain our nuclear proliferation of our own systems? How do we not go in for some basic issues and reduce our arsenals, and also take some concrete decisions of non-use of nuclear weapons. I agree with you. There's something, but till that happens, I'm afraid you know the scenario. This is what the scenario is, and will that happen? We've seen Poseidon, we've seen Brentskowitz, we've seen new digging in Los Alamos. We see the two nuclear command exercises that took place, one in America, one in Europe. We are also now seeing in Europe trying to get an independent nuclear capabilities. It's proliferating, sir. It's not reducing. So everybody is trying to use nuclear weapons as a strategic hedge. That's the sad part.
Yeah. Uh, I know what it takes to prepare for 1 hour talk. Hats off to the generals who must be putting in at least 8 hours of precious retired life to educate and create awareness. I must thank Brig Arun Sahgal because this is a topic not many will speak, and this is where I say that look, in Gunner Shot, the endeavor is to get quality analysis to you, not just waffling talks. Everyone can talk waffle. Everyone can waffle and talk their way through. But this is reference talk, but this is considered talk and puts things squarely so that people understand. And hence, I would request all of you like this video, share this video with your friends, and also subscribe to Ghana Shot. Okay. And sir, congratulations for clocking in 10 million views. While India Pakistan events get most eyeballs naturally, I appreciate that you also cover other geopolitical events with same level of detail and lucidity. Thanks a lot. Look, 10 million views have been possible only because all of you have participated in this, and I have fantastic people like Brig Arun Sahgal coming in and giving credibility to this channel and getting people over so that we can talk on a wide range of subjects, right? And I'm thankful to all of you once again. Okay. And Sir Sanjay PR says, excellent top class presentation, Brigadier Sir. Thank you. It's all yours. You are this thing. Again, another person, Malika, says, wonderful top-notch analysis, sir. I have to admit that I haven't come across any podcast which has put across analysis on such a sensitive, hot-button, tricky issue from India's perspective. Many salutes. Thank you, sir. And yeah, this is an interesting question. Are we the only country which is facing two nuclear hostile enemies? Our threat can't be compared to any other countries. Your views? We are.
Absolutely. We are. We are the only country on this earth which has two nuclear neighbors, and not only two nuclear neighbors, but two nuclear neighbors working in conjunction with each other, cooperating with each other, part of each other, collaborating with each other, collusion with each other. That's what we are, unfortunately. That's our reality.
Okay. So, a bit of astrology. Sir, now is the era of war for both Bharat and PM. Skanda, Mars, Mahadasha, time, place, circumstances on our side, not theirs. They're fighting on land. That is Dharmashetra. It was there, not. Anyway, that's the thing. Let's see if these stars work out the right way or not. Okay. Right. Yeah, what a presentation by Brigadier Sir. Uh, Thanks a lot. I mean, the credit is all of Brigadier Sahgal, who insisted on giving this kind of a presentation to all of us. Okay. Yeah. So I think we've come to the end of the whole story today. I must thank you again for this wonderful presentation. I must tell everyone at where we are standing. I mean, I agree with the Brigadier, we were talking earlier also. I don't see our establishment, our military establishment and our political establishment, understanding the changes which have happened in Pakistan. There's no material change. They have the same weapons, they have everything is the same, everything. But there's a structural change and an organizational change which has happened. And that organizational change is something which we need to track and we need to respond. We not only have to respond, we have to be proactive, as someone said, and go ahead of the curve. And I think it's time for us to sit seriously on this whole show. So, your last words, and then I say Jai Hind.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. My idea was to highlight to your 10 million viewers and all those who are listening the gravity of the changes taking place in Pakistan, and the impact of the changes, particularly the impact of changes in the nuclear command structure and the instability that it is creating. We need to be cautious about it. We need to think about it, and I think from the some of the replies that I've seen, people are trying to at least understand and acknowledge this. Thank you for this opportunity, sir.
Thanks a lot, sir, and thanks for everyone viewing. Jai Hind, and good evening, and good night, or good morning, wherever you are. Jai Hind, sir, and Jai Hind to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.